He hadn't seen her in years, but the earth still whispered her name in the dust, and the wind still carried her voice through the tall grass. Every dawn he woke in the same silence where she once stood, and every night he lay beneath stars they had counted together long ago. She was gone but never truly absent. A hollow ache pulsing beneath muscle and instinct, and time did nothing but deepen the wound. Then one morning, as light fractured through the trees, he found it not her, but something broken, something trembling, a paralyzed bird staring up at him. Not with fear, but with something older than survival. Something that pulled at the thread of memory so violently it nearly brought him to his knees. And in that moment, when prey did not run and the hunter did not strike, the years between them collapsed into a single breath, and he remembered not what she was, but what she made him feel, and the silence of the wild began to crack. Every morning he walked the same worn path through the whispering, grass his muscles moving with the rhythm of instinct but lacking the fire that once lived in them. The sun rose and fell like it always had, casting long familiar shadows across the earth. Yet none of it touched him. Not really. He drank from the same pool with slow, deliberate sips. He paused beneath the same tree where the bark still held the faintest trace of her scent, and each time the breeze shifted, he would lift his head not out of curiosity, but out of something quieter, more painful, hope not, loud enough to name but never gone. The world around him was alive, but he moved through it like a fading shape, not hunted, not hunting, not belonging to anything. He slept alone, curled tight as if trying to hold something in or keep something out. The nights were the hardest when the stars were too bright, too still, and he could hear the rustle of leaves in the wind just wrong enough to remind him she wasn't there anymore. And still each morning he returned to that hill, sat beneath that same tree, and stared into nothing, his body still, his eyes open as if waiting for the impossible to find him again. He didn't understand at first when her scent began to fade from the trees, when her voice stopped echoing through the soft twilight air, when the footsteps he knew by heart no longer returned to the edge of the camp. He waited for days, then weeks, pacing the borders with restless eyes, ears tuned to every shift in the wind. But the wind brought no answers, only silence thick and final, the kind that doesn't speak but swallows. He called once, sharp and aching, but no one came, and something inside him shifted. Not all at once, but like a slow collapse, the kind that starts deep and spreads until you forget what it felt like to be whole. He stopped going. Near the camp, stopped looking at the horizon with hope in his eyes. The stories she used to tell at dusk unraveled in his mind, until only fragments remained. Starlight warmth, the sound of her breath when she laughed. These things lingered but dimmed, and in their place grew the stillness, the cold. He no longer played, he no longer ran, not with joy, not with purpose. His steps became quiet, calculated, the movements of a creature who knew the world had nothing left to offer. He lay beneath the same stars they once watched together and blinked against the cold sky, unmoved by their glow. Time passed not in days, but in the weight of silence pressed against his chest. He had been loved once, and he had let himself believe in it. Now he moved through the wild, like a shadow that forgot it had ever been light. Let's take a small pause in the story. And I want to ask you, where are you listening from right now? Have you ever felt that quiet, aching recognition from someone, a person, or even an animal, who remembered you after years apart? Maybe just a look, a gesture, something that told you the bond was never truly gone. If stories like this speak to your heart, don't forget to follow. There's so much more ahead, and I'd love to have you with me for it. The sound shouldn't have meant anything. Not to him, not anymore, but it cut through the stillness, like a thread pulling at something long buried, a weak flapping, a breathless rustle, and suddenly he was no longer in the present. He was back in the warmth of her arms, hearing the crackle of a fire, the low hum of her voice as she read aloud to no one but him. The wind smelled the same dry grass and dusk, and something else. Something human memory came. Not like a flood, but like lightning. Sharp, sudden, unstoppable, the way she used to laugh when he pounced too soon. The way she'd whisper, "It's okay." When storms made him tremble, he shook his head as if trying to scatter it all. But the scent was still there, the sound still real, and when he saw the bird, so broken, so exposed, he froze. He should have killed it. He knew that, but its helplessness was too familiar. And something in him recoiled. Not from the bird, but from what he had become. In her absence, hollow, indifferent. A creature of habit, not feeling for anything anymore. And now here was this fragile life in front of him, and for the first time in years he hesitated, stared, not as a predator, but as something uncertain. A question rose inside him, raw and heavy. What if she remembered too? What if she waited? What if he went back and nothing was there? What if the only one still holding on was him? The questions stung like thorns, but beneath them something else stirred. Not certainty, not yet, but motion, like breath after long silence, like blood warming, in a frozen vein. And without knowing why he stayed beside the bird, not for safety, not for hunger, but because some small part of him had started to hope again. He moved slowly as if afraid the moment would vanish if he breathed too hard. Each step was careful, not silent, but honest. His muscles tensed, not for attack, but from something deeper. Almost trembling, the bird didn't move, it couldn't. But its eyes followed him, and in them was something that reached beyond pain, beyond fear, something impossibly old. The leopard lowered himself beside it, not touching at first, just near enough to feel its breath shallow but steady. The sun filtered through the trees, catching the dust in golden streaks, and for a while nothing happened, just two lives broken in, different ways, sharing the same quiet. Then he leaned in nose, barely grazing feathers, and there it was. Not a scent exactly. Not a sound, but a presence, like turning a corner and finding an old room exactly as it was left. The smell of her hands, the warmth of her laugh tucked in the tiny weight of this creature, as if the bird carried her echo, and the moment he touched it, recognition hit him like thunder. No roar, no cry, just stillness, absolute and full. His body softened. Breath deepened something. In his chest cracked open, he licked the bird once gently, not to clean, not to heal, just to say, "I see you." And the bird responded not with fear, but a single sound, a thin, shaky chirp, like a memory pulling itself from sleep. And in that moment, time folded in on itself, years vanished, silence shattered, and the space between them filled with something wordless and undeniable. Not the past, not the future, but the raw truth of now recognition didn't need a face. It needed a feeling, and in that single heartbeat, he was not alone, he was seen, known, remembered, and so was the bird. Two lives paused by pain, now breathing again, because something had found its way back, something that had never really left. In the soft hush of morning, he rose not with the cold detachment of instinct, but with care, glancing down to check the bird still nestled near his side, breathing slow and steady, not healed but here, and that was enough. He didn't rush anymore. His movements had changed softer, more aware, like someone, remembering how to feel again. He nudged the bird gently, helping it upright, then lay beside it, watching light filter through the leaves, and for the first time in years, his eyes didn't scan for threats or vanish into memory. They simply stayed present. The bird chirped, sometimes barely audible, but it filled the silence with something warm and real, and he would respond with a tilt of his head, a flick of his ear. Small things, but they mattered, tiny gestures that said, "I'm here, I see you." The rangers watched from a distance, barely daring to breathe. They left food closer and closer, and one day he came not out of hunger, but curiosity. Trust returning in the shape of a single step. The bird rode on his back, now clinging with fragile claws, unmoving. But never alone, and he let it stay, even when he ran. Not far, but farther than before, his muscles remembered joy. His eyes began to shine again, and though he never roared, he let out low purrs sometimes in sleep, as if her voice still reached him. Their love had returned not with drama or thunder, but like water soaking into dry earth, quietly, fully, completely. He didn't need answers anymore, didn't need to know where she had gone. The bond hadn't died. It had only waited, changed, grown roots in silence. And now, it lived again, not as memory, but as motion, as breath, as presence. The world had hurt him, and yet in the smallest act of staying, he had chosen to feel again, and in that choice, in that stillness, he found meaning, not in what was lost, but in what remained. Some bonds don't need words. They live in silence, in breath, in the spaces between moments. They survive absence, distance, time. What was once broken doesn't always stay that way. Sometimes it waits, quietly, patiently, until two hearts, no matter how scarred, remember how to beat in rhythm again. This was never just a meeting, it was a return, a quiet promise that love, when real, does not vanish. It only hides until it's safe to be seen again, and when it comes back, it doesn't roar, it rests beside you and stays.